Welcome to the Under Construction Podcast with me, Martin Williams. Here we talk about how to build or rebuild your life one step at a time. Let's get to work.
And thank you for tuning into the Under Construction Podcast. My name is Martin Williams. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. You may do so on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and SoundCloud. All the links to the podcast can be found at guidedexpressions.com/podcast with an S. Today's podcast will be entitled More Decisive, Less Confusion. So a couple months ago, I read this book, The Power of Decision. It was written by Raymond Charles Barker. And I think I've mentioned it on the podcast before, but basically this book was, it was written in the 1960s. I want to say 1968 by a lecturer. He was a minister, and he gave lectures every week in New York City. And he was kind of like a law of attraction person, before it became what it is today. But he really said a lot of important things in that book and also throughout his lectures. I mean, I haven't studied all his lectures, but from what I've read, it's just very impressive, very powerful truths that he has disseminated over the years. And he's not here anymore. But my point is that he was someone who really believed that anyone could live the life that they wanted to live as long as they govern themselves by a few simple laws. And his big thing was just making a decision and being more decisive in life, and making a decision to be happy and a decision to be financially independent or to be abundant, to be healthy, a decision to be healthy, a decision to live life to the fullest, right? So that's what this book was really centered around. It's really centered around just how powerful a decision is when you make it, right? And one of the things he said in the book was, the failure to make a decision is a decision for failure, right? Being indecisive. Right? Have you ever been behind someone who, you may be at a drive-through or in a store, at the cashier line, and you are behind someone who won't make a decision, right? Refuses to make a decision, and how frustrating that can be, right? I know at McDonald's it happens a lot, and 80% of McDonald's menu hasn't changed in probably over 40, 50 years, as long as I've been on this planet. Most of what McDonald's sells these days, they've been selling the whole time. So it amazes me how people are still, indecisive when they go to somewhere like McDonald's. I mean, it's either burger, fries, nuggets, chicken sandwich. You know what I mean? Like there's really, or a salad. Like there's really not much else McDonald's does, right? But that it really has nothing to do with McDonald's. I know that, right? I'm trying to, make a joke, but it really has more to do with how we think. So when you don't make a decision, right, there's all these options out here. And we live basically in a universe of unlimited options, infinite possibilities, right? So if you're indecisive, it can be a real challenge because, you can do anything, you can have anything, but you first have to decide. But if you don't decide, then you're constantly sorting through all of these infinite possibilities and not experiencing any of them. Or another thing that happens is that people just get tired of being indecisive and then they just keep doing what they've always done. And that can be bad, right? Especially if it's not what you want, right? Let's say that you haven't had good romantic partners. And so, your last two relationships were really rough. The infinite possibilities are, yes, you can have another bad relationship or you can have an amazing one. But you have to basically become a match for that, right? So as long as you keep talking about how bad the last relationship was, chances are, until you make a decision to have better, you're going to have a relationship just as bad as the last one, if not worse. And a lot of times people don't recognize that. They don't understand that. They don't understand the power of a decision. You have to make a decision to be, financially stable, right? And ultimately financially independent. And that decision has to be made daily if it's not your natural, inclination, for lack of a better word. If you're not naturally at that place, like if you're not there, and you've never been there, okay, you got to make a decision to be there, right? So let's say you're home, but you want to go to the store, you got to make a decision to go to the store. Okay, because you can sit at home and say, well, should I go to Publix? Should I go to Walmart? Should I go to, Acme? Shout out to Philadelphia. Should I go to, all these other Whole Foods, Trader Joe's? Like, you can go to all these different stores, but you'll waste so much time trying to decide which store you want to go to instead of just making a decision to go to the store that you need to go to. And making a decision as convoluted and as complicated as a lot of people have made it, it really is not all that complicated. If I'm trying to make a decision of what store to go to, what's going to be like the tiebreaker? What is it that will cause me to go to one store over the other is what's in that store, right? Because, Trader Joe's has things that Publix doesn't have or Walmart doesn't have, right? And then Walmart has things that Trader Joe's doesn't have. And it may be a situation where I have to go to more than one. And that's fine too, right? But you got to make a decision and basically say, okay, well, the place that I need to go, will it give me what it is that I need? And if the answer is yes, then that's where I'm going, right? So if I make a decision to be financially stable, what will financial stability give me, right? It will give me, just less strain and less stress over how much money I have in my bank account, right? Or what have you. So I got to make a decision for financial stability. And then when I make that decision, then, there will be several decisions after that, right? And, it may be the type of work that I do, right? So when I decide what type of work I do, will that work be fulfilling, and will that work give me the necessary resources to be financially independent or financially stable, and then ultimately financially independent, right? So you can see how decisions get made, right? The first decision is yes or no, left or right. Then when I go left or go right, then it's, what am I going to do now? Am I going to go here? Am I going to go there? And using my experience, using what I know, using what I've learned, right? I know that if I go right, it'll probably give me what I need and what I want. If I go left, it probably won't. So the right decision is to go right instead of to go left, right? So you can see how people oftentimes can get confused because, again, infinite possibilities, infinite choices, right? I got 7 grocery stores I can go to. I got, all these different places that I can live. I got all these different places that I can choose to go. But do I belong at every place? And the answer, of course, is no, right? Where do I belong? I belong where I will get what I need to move forward in my life, right? So if you're indecisive, it can increase confusion because you're trying to sort through all the possibilities, right? And I think a better way to approach that is to, instead of trying to sift through all the possibilities, it is to decide what you want and then move in a direction that best matches what you want. If I want to make $10,000 a month, I'm not going to take a job at McDonald's. Okay? Excuse me. I'm not going to take a job at McDonald's. Nothing against McDonald's and nothing against people who work at McDonald's. But that doesn't line up with my goal. My goal is to make 10 grand a month. And unless I am an executive at McDonald's, I'm not going to make 10 grand a month. So it's probably better for me to do like my own business, right? Or, it's probably better to find a job that pays that. And if I can't find a job that pays that, then I've got to work for myself where there's no cap on what I can make. You understand? So a lot of times people are indecisive and they say, well, okay, yeah, I want to make 10 grand a month, but I gotta pay my rent in the meantime. And that's understood. So then you've got to make another decision. Is the goal to pay the rent or to make 10 grand? You might say, well, it's both. And I agree with that too. So in the meantime, you may have to pay your rent and get a job, right? To pay the rent. And then you're making another decision. You're going to have to make another decision at some point to say, okay, the job is okay, but I really want to make 10 grand, right? So now I've got to make another decision and, at that point, move into something where there's no cap on what you make. But you can see how life can, you can see how the flow goes, right? A decision that I make today may not necessarily be the decision that I make 2 years from now, right? And we see this a lot of times in relationships, yeah? Or even just life in general. How many times have you dated someone or been with someone like 5 years ago, and now there's no way in the world you'd be that person, right? There's no way in the world that you would choose that person again. And, it's nothing, it's not a slight to that person. You're just in a different place, right? So going back to the scenario of the rent and making the 10 grand, right? So you chose a job so you could pay the rent. But, a year later, that desire to make the 10 grand hasn't gone away. It's actually gotten stronger. So now you've really got to make a decision. And maybe you decide, okay, I want this 10 grand so bad. I'm willing to get a roommate, or I'm willing to maybe move back home, or I'm willing to, augment what I'm spending so I can, basically bridge the gap that it might take for me to make that 10 grand, if that makes sense, right? So, you may quit your job at the end of the month and it might take a month or two to get to that 10 grand, right? But it's all life is basically a series of decisions. So once you decide to make the 10 grand, the way is going to open up. And it basically means that once that way opens up, it's basically a decision to stay on that path until you make the 10 grand, right? There's always a way. It's just that people often give up before they get what it is they want. Does that make sense? So I want to just really encourage you to, number one, make a decision. Like, stop being that person in the checkout line who can't decide what they want, right? Don't be that person. If you're that person, stop being that person, right? Decide what it is you want. And if you don't like it, you can bring it back, right? If you don't like, you may have made it a relationship decision that you're not crazy about, change it. You know what I mean? If it's not going to work out, then it's not going to work out. No harm, no foul. If you made a business decision a year ago that you wouldn't make now, then, find a way to exit out of that business and go into something that is more aligned with who you are, right? Don't beat yourself up for making a bad decision, because every person walking the face of the earth has made a bad decision at some point. Some of us more than others, but you don't stop just because you made a bad decision, right? You learn from it, grow by it, and then get back out there, because that's all life. Life is just a series of decisions. You got to make a decision in order to move forward. If you don't make a decision, you get stuck. And hopefully that makes sense. So thank you so much for tuning in to the Under Construction Podcast. My name is Martin Williams, and don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, share, and I'll talk to you soon.
Don't forget to subscribe to the Under Construction Podcast on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and SoundCloud. For more information on Guided Expressions courses and products, go to guidedexpressions.com/products.